Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast, where we have conversations with guests about their life, loss, grief, and of course, grief dreams, which can be dreams of the deceased. If you want to know more about the topic and your host, please visit the website griefdreams.ca. To support the podcast, please go ahead and rate it. For additional ways to support the show, please see the episode show notes. Before I move on with the show, I would like to give a territory acknowledgement. Long before Canada was formed, the Saddle people were the original land stewards, and they have lived here since time immemorial. They continue to live in the unceded Saddle territory known to settlers as the Fraser Valley and Lower Fraser Canyon of British Columbia. I recognize and honor the contribution that Indigenous peoples have made and continue to make to our community and the topic of grief dreams. Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. So today we have on the podcast Felicia Cardinal. Felicia manages an Indigenous clothing store in Chilliwack, British Columbia called Section 35. She is originally from Saddle Lake Cree Nation, and Saddle Lake Cree Nation is a Plains Cree First Nations community located in the Beaver Hills region of central Alberta, Canada. Felicia was born in Edmonton, Alberta, and raised in and around there. She moved to Chilliwack in 2009 with her grandmother, who has since moved back to Alberta. Felicia likes to spend her free time at home with her two cats or connecting with close friends. So Felicia, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
We met before, and I always enjoy when people talk about their dreams. And when I sort of talked about like this podcast and the dreams aspect of life, you kind of lit up a little bit. And so I really wanted you to come on and talk more about just dreams in general. And then also your grief journey, because I know you've been through a lot. And so the first question I have for you is, how did you really, I guess, begin loving dreams or valuing dreams? Because I know it was a process for me. It wasn't until I was kind of in university that I actually started loving and appreciating dreams.
Honestly, for me, I think it started when I was a kid. I grew up in foster care and group homes a lot of the time. So it was almost like, when you're dreaming and you're sleeping, it was like my escape, the escape from, being in a situation you may not necessarily, want to be in, and you're missing people, and you're just kind of like wanting to have a connection that you don't necessarily have a control over. So I think it started at a young age, even before like really losing anybody. It was, just a way to connect, I think, spiritually.
And so were your dreams more positive, or were they a little more negative and like nightmarish? Because I know when people are going through a lot of distress, some of the research shows that they have more of these negative dreams. But if you're getting an escape, were they positive in nature?
They could have been, but a lot of the times, I suffer from anxiety. I'm a very anxious person. That I think started at a young age as well. And so I would always have dreams where you're like running or trying to get away, or there's, water, you're just pacing in the water, things like that. For sure. But, there were times where it was positive.
That's cool. That's interesting. And how did that go? So did you reach out to anyone when you were having these dreams to try to understand it? Did you try to figure it out yourself? I know different Indigenous communities can have certain symbols that mean certain things. And I'm curious how you, maybe if you brought in your culture within it, or if you tried to figure this out on your own based on what was around you at that time.
Well, I was lucky that one of the homes that I was in at the time, they had a sweat lodge in the yard, which was really cool because, it wasn't on a reservation or anything. It wasn't a predominantly Indigenous community or anything, but it was something that they had offered to us. And I found that was like a really good way to kind of sit with it, and just really reach into what those feelings are. It's really hard to understand when you're a kid and you really don't even fully understand the world, and you kind of make up your own dialogue for that. But I really feel like that was definitely a part of it.
As you move forward in life, did you see those dreams change, or did you see your understanding of these dreams change in any way?
Yeah, I think definitely. When I got older, I lost my parents at a fairly young age when I was still in care. I was like 13 when my dad passed, and then like 15 maybe when my mom passed. So it was a really rough time for me. And I think after that, after those two really big losses, then things started to get a little bit more hectic in my dreams. I had other ways of coping at that age. Addiction was a big deal. It was basically, that's what I leaned on, kind of further distance myself from any of the spiritual side of things. I had a religion kind of forced on me as far as Christianity and things like that in schools and foster care. They kind of just put you in church and and then I kind of associated that with the system and I distanced myself from it. So yeah, it was really tough. So definitely during that time of heavy addiction too, at a young age, everything, your dreams are not usually very pleasant.
I heard that, and I think it's always hard too because some people like even can dream of using. Did you dream of using like also
Oh
like within
yeah,
that
yeah.
time? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a struggle too. You wake up and you just feel some type of way about it. And it's, even if you've taken like a long distance of sobriety and such, or, it still comes around and it still feels so real. Just connecting with that kid in you that was going through those tough times.
Right, yeah. And going back to you mentioned sort of your two of your I don't know if they're your first losses, but two major losses with your parents.
Mm.
How did you handle that? Like, did you have support when that happened? Like, is that because you were young?
Yeah, it was really weird actually. I found out first through the group workers at the home I was in that my dad had passed. And then we drove to the city to find my brothers and I ended up telling my brothers. So like I kind of had one on each arm and they're my older brothers. And when I told them, they were like kind of cried on me and I remember I didn't cry. And I feel like since that moment was like my youth was gone and it was like, time to step it up, like be the big little sister. And that's kind of what it's been, going forward. So still feel that to this day. But I mean, yeah, as far as support, it was just really leaning on my brothers.
And so what did that look like? It was just like you opened up conversation and dialogue. Was it just like continuing their memory, or was there like any other kind of like rituals you would do together?
Honestly, we just make jokes. We just memories and jokes and stuff. Like, my relationship with our dad was like, he was a really funny guy. He was also quite abusive. He had addiction issues too, which obviously brought out another person. And that was like the one you're not really so connected to. And then that's not the one that we try to remember either. We try to think about the good things.
It's always interesting when our relationships with the people who have died is complex because a lot of times people just like gravitate towards one or the other, but relationships are
Hmm.
so dynamic and the things people have said and done to us over time. And there's a lot of healing that, still needs to happen. And so it is interesting to see how you process that and you remember more of those good times when you honor him, but also giving great understanding into some of the behaviors that were happening that I said like wasn't directed towards you because you were like a bad person in any way. It was just like addiction does certain things and like trauma does
Hmm.
so much in how we treat others around us. And it's nice how you can really see that in a way that I think is conducive to your healing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's tricky too because I feel like I dream more about my mom. It's been a long time since I've had any dreams about my dad. I think my connection was a little bit stronger with her. It's always like the harder one for me, I think. But when I dream about her, it's always like very, almost torturous. It's like you're on the top of a school and you can see her down there and she's facing away, but it's her. She's got her long curly hair and her summer dresses you should always wear. And it's like this journey. It's a perilous issue trying to get down the building and you're sliding down up this grate and then you're getting there. And as soon as I get to her, it's like then you wake up. You don't really get to see her face. And I've had that dream so many times in the past. And, probably wasn't even that long ago where I have other renditions of it, but fairly similar. Like I never really get to be there, which is pretty awful. Up until recently, we lost our auntie, which was my mom's sister. They were very, very similar and very close. And I had a dream when I was with them both at my auntie's house, and we were all just sitting around a table and we're all just laughing. And it just felt so genuine. And I could finally see her face. So, like, that to me is like, what does that mean? Was she like happy to have her sister with her now? Like, is there peace there? Like, that's kind of something that stands out to me recently.
I think it's good to like talk about that. Like what are your beliefs on some of these dreams? Like how do you like process them? Because I know sometimes people will see every dream of the deceased as like a visitation in some way.
Yeah.
Others like don't. And so like how do you see your dreams?
I definitely see them as visitation. Like anytime I talk about it, I'm like, oh, my mom visited me last night, or, my friend Mikey, which was another big loss, things like that. I do see it. But sometimes I just think like, I'm like, maybe this is just something that you really want. So your brain will manifest what you really desire. We've all had those dreams about, money or, everything's going great and stuff, right? And then nightmares are like your anxieties that I think can just take over the positivity side of a dream, right? So I try to see it as visitation because for me, it gives it comfort, like really being able to spend time with somebody and whether or not it's like real. To me, it feels real.
And I think it's interesting, like there's that feeling that goes along with some of the dreams, right? Where it just makes it different. And it's a different kind of dream. You know, like looking back at your mom, the dreams you had of your mom where she was facing away. Yeah, how do you see that? Do you feel like you like she wasn't really looking for you in the sense that like it was more like you visiting her? 'Cause I know some dreams it's like the deceased visiting the person, right? Like in their own house or
Yeah.
room. And it seems like you were like visiting her maybe. Is that how you kind of saw that or?
Yeah, I think so, but I think it also just comes again from like being in care and like, I think the facing away was like her not maybe putting in the effort, that she could have put in. There were so many times where she missed visits or didn't show up or went missing and like no one knew where she was and we were just in the dark for so long. And then she'd pop in, she's kind of like a helicopter mom, pop in for the good times occasionally, but so I always feel like that's kind of what that is. Like, there's no doubt in my mind I have abandonment issues, resulting from being in care, not having parents that, did the things that they could do to get you back, essentially. So that's, I think, where a lot of that comes from. Since my auntie's passed, I haven't had that dream. When I see her, she's with me, she's looking at me, we're laughing. And it's interesting, like, so with her and with my auntie and stuff, when I dream of them, it seems real. So you're not even thinking about the fact that they're not alive. You're in the moment. But when I dream about my friend Mikey who passed away, it's always like a shock. Like, what are you doing here? And he knows, and I know. So in those moments, that's when it feels really real. When it's real, like a visitation, because you're almost like lucid.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about Mikey? Like who Mikey was to you? Yeah.
Mikey. So after my grandma adopted me out of foster care, I moved to the north side in Edmonton. And Mikey was one of the first people that I met there who introduced me to a whole string of people on the north side. And he was just like a really, really good friend, very, very close. And unfortunately, he passed away. Man, it's coming up probably 7 years now. It was just a few days before New Year's, I believe. And it was, a tragic sudden loss. And it kind of like the group fell apart. Nobody gets together anymore, kind of a thing. And like he was kind of that guy, like that glue. And so that was always really awful. But I have his picture next to my couch. Like he's always smiling. He always had that big smile and a goofy laugh and always the best hugs. Like he was just a great guy all around. So it's like that's something that, he's one of those people you wish you could just pick up the phone and be like, hey man, like this is how it's going. And because he was that guy who would always pick up the phone, he was always there. So that being like he still comes around and visits, but like I said, it's like we always are aware that, he's not there and it's very confusing. Like, why are you here? What are you doing? Like, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, the themes, right? Like how they're just different also for like different people,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
is fascinating. Also, like your relationships and who they were kind of like are in this in many ways too. Have you heard him laugh yet in the dream? Since that was like a
I
key
have, yeah.
characteristic. Oh, you did.
Yeah, it's so good, but it's like heartbreaking too. It's like those are the dreams you wake up and you're like hurt by it because it's like I said, you're aware in the dream, and then you wake up and it's even more aware, and you're like, ugh. Whereas like my mom, she passed when I was so young. You've had like so much more time to heal and kind of like go through the motions, and then being in care, you kind of were already used to not having her around all the time, anyways. But your best friend that you spend like every day with for years and years and years, and was a huge part of like your youth and your growth in that time, being a teenager and in your early 20s. Like he was really influential to me. So I think it's like different, and I just carry it differently.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I'm curious as an adult, like what are the things then that you have done or you do to maybe work with some of that may be a little different than what you had when you lost your parents?
I think now, I think the difference is like I talk about it where I would never really talked about it before. I hid behind, like I said, substance abuse for so long, and it's like you just avoid it, and then it just weighs on you forever and drags out all the turmoil for so long unnecessarily. But I think now that I have a little bit more clarity, and you're sitting with it, and you have healthier relationships with people, positive people in my life, I think that can actually like hear you whereas opposed to just being in these rooms with these people that don't really necessarily care about you. They're just there for the good time, right? So it's a really, I feel like who you surround yourself with makes it a little bit different and a lot easier, I think, to share those things. So,
I like
yeah.
that. It's so important. I think we forget that sometimes. Like we try to be friends with almost sometimes everyone or anyone. And it's like really setting boundaries, like who is there to support you? Like who is actually in your corner? Because it's
Yeah.
so important for that within our journey, right? As we sort of need people to maintain our joy, to maintain our happiness, get comforted, because life is just so stressful and we're taking like, said the past with us as we move forward, and we're gonna have great challenges. And to have those people
Mhm.
making those different decisions, it's a process. I know for me, like personally, I've had to learn how to do that better over time. Where like I realized, oh, this person's not really in my corner. Like I'm gonna have to cut them out. So did you see yourself doing that over time, to like choosing maybe like different friends or different relationships as you sort of matured and as you work through some stuff within yourself? So it's like, oh wait, like I can't have this person at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's been like the last probably, I'd say, good 2 years of my life. Since I moved into my own apartment from my grandma's place, when she got dementia, she moved back home to Alberta. So I kind of got my own place. I wanted to stay in Chilliwack. I was kind of established here. And the first couple years, you just have parties and you have all kinds of people around. It's like this freedom of, your own space, and things get out of hand. But I realized that after over time that it didn't really serve me. And you feel being used. It's those energies are so negative, and you're not getting anywhere. And then since I started my journey with section, like it's also just awoken up this whole other side of me, and just really looking into like the Indigenous culture side of things I never really explored before in my party times and stuff. I never really like thought about any of that, and participating in ceremonies and just going hearing the drums and things like that. It's just really important. So with that, yeah, you cut a lot of people out, and it gets lonely sometimes, but sometimes I remind myself that loneliness is kind of a part of the growth.
That's pretty wise. It's really and beautiful too for other people that are, on the journey too. It can be very lonely
Hmm.
making those significant changes. And because
Hmm.
all those people around you kind of most of them love you for who you used to be, not who you're turning into or who you are currently.
Yeah.
And so to actually have that shift, it takes so much courage and strength. So I commend you on like having that within you to do that. And that you have, like said, like new maybe role models or new friends that are uplifting and also like encouraging other sides of you, like with the Indigenous cultures and how important that can be for growth. And it's sad that you didn't have that growing up to the extent that you do now. And could you talk a little bit about maybe what some of those are for, people who just don't understand or don't know much about Indigenous cultures and some of the practices?
As far as the practices go, I don't can't say that I do a whole lot. I think it's just really about looking in and reaching out to your, brothers and sisters. And I mean that isn't, all our brothers and sisters. We don't have to be related, but just leaning in on each other and really exploring that. I haven't been able to have the privilege of doing a sweat or anything recently, which is something that I've been really wanting to do, but for me, I connect with nature, just going outside and really taking an appreciation for what's around you. It's all just right there. Since I moved to BC, I sometimes forget we even have mountains because you're just so focused on, you know, this life, and I'm like, just look up at the sky and just feel it. And, go to the river, dip your toes. Like, don't forget to reconnect. We just get so caught up in our day to day that it's so easy to just lose that spiritual side of yourself and that connection with earth. And I think that's really a big part of it for me.
I think, and I know some Indigenous communities that like the medicine wheel like really encompasses and reminds people of that, if I'm not mistaken, about the connection with
Mhm.
nature and different elements of oneself. And I get you where it's like you can get so preoccupied with the things in front of you, you forget where you're at in the moment. And that's why
Mhm.
like I said, I live in BC too. People don't know, and to be able to see the mountains and just take a minute, it does wonders. And I'm realizing more and more how nature is something that I long for, like every day to get out and be near trees and stuff. And it's something that the academic community is actually like doing more and more research on the importance of, nature and the environment on individuals. But, Indigenous communities knew about this stuff and practiced this stuff like way, way back before any of this. And so it's interesting how I think Western research is coming just back to learn what Indigenous cultures already knew to begin with. with a lot of different
Mhm.
things. And so I'm happy that you're able to do that. And could you talk about maybe the medicine wheel, if that's something you're willing to do?
I honestly, it's again, it's like hasn't really been a big teaching for me. I never had a whole lot of like those teachings when I was young. I grew up in care, so I didn't get a lot of that. I've only really recently started kind of reaching in and learning about these things myself because like I just kind of disconnected from everything and everyone for so long. And then now it's like it's new to me. So it's a beautiful symbol. It's important in the culture, absolutely. But I think as far as teachings go, it's not, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't know what to say. And I just know what it means for me and how it makes me feel.
Like the more you talk, the more you continue to realize like not only the grief of the loss of what has died, but so much of the culture like died for you, as a kid and trying to reconnect with that. And there's a lot of grief that would go along with just not having that growing up and looking around. Could you speak to any of that of just like also realizing like not being part of your journey really until now? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how important it was, like, up until recently. You know, you miss out on so many things that when you're a kid, you don't really know the difference. So, for me, it's just looking around at other people who've had it since they were young, and I'm, like, really wishing for that, especially speaking the language and just, like, having more understanding for traditions and teachings and things like that. It's there's always that, "Man, I wished I had that," but then again, a lot of my cousins that grew up with that also grew up on the on reservations. They didn't have great lives. They might be able to speak Cree and they might, have more teachings, but there was a lot of abuse that came along with that. And I feel like that's fairly common with a lot of places back where I'm from in Alberta. A lot of the reserves are pretty rough. So even though like there's a side of me that's wishing that I had that, I think just growing up the way that I did maybe has saved me from a lot of situations that, I could have been in if I had grown up more on the res, but I didn't. I visited there on the weekends, visited my mom and stuff, but I didn't grow up there. I always went back to, a home where, it was somewhat safe, right? So kind of like a win-lose type of situation, right?
right. Yeah. When you start looking at it in that way. But it's nice how
Mhm,
you're in a position now to regain some of the stuff that was not present. And I think that's the beauty of maturing too. Where you get to make different choices and start to
mhm.
healing in different ways. And that is really, like a lot of times we don't fully know what we need to heal. And, these dreams I feel can really help us in different ways too. Like these dreams of the deceased, like I've had my own. I think that, that one with your auntie and your mom and like that was such a beautiful thing because like when you were talking, I was like, oh wow, like all the other ones she's never had that. And then she finally gets this moment and like what that may do for someone inside, like consciously of what
Mhm.
maybe you think it would do, but also like internally, like what it can actually shift also for you to be able to have like a moment like that.
Yeah, and well, what's interesting too is, other forms of grief, we're not even grieving somebody who's even passed. Like I'd mentioned my grandma, she has dementia. So we spent so much time together and we have all these memories and then it's like suddenly you just overnight it's like they don't know you anymore and that person that like you've grown to know and love is gone. So I dream about her a lot. I know she's just in Alberta in a home, right? But I dream about her a lot, and in those dreams, it's like we have a lucid conversation, which is something that I think I miss. Like, I grieve all of our ability to laugh together. She was so, like, so funny and just ridiculous, and we just had this connection, and I wanna share things with her, just like with Mikey, I wanna share stuff, but it's you can't really because they don't understand anymore, and I think that's, like, probably one of the more tougher dreams to have because it's still, like, an active thing in my life.
Right. Yeah. And wow. When you think about the loss of just like someone not knowing you, like how
Mhm.
like disheartening that is, because like so much of our connection is based on memories, right? Like, and
Yeah.
for it to be one, it's totally one sided now. Where it's like you have the memories, but they don't. Like, what have you found to maybe help in that way? Because I like why I say that is because my grandma also has dementia, and when I was told that, I didn't really understand like what that meant. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe she doesn't remember me, but I had always had this like idea that, oh, but I'm special. Like, she'll remember me,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
she'll
Then when
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
she'll know. Yeah, I'll break through the boundaries. And then I went there and she didn't know, and it was so sad. It was like I was like almost sick in the sense of
Hmm.
like the feeling there and just like the sadness of just n not knowing also what to say and like you can't do what you normally would do. And it wasn't until I took some time because I went back to BC. Then when I came back to see her, I had a different mindset going in, and that helped me a lot to processing and having fun with her, but just in a different way. So I started asking her
Yeah.
questions on like, what do you like to do? And she'd be like, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know. And I'd be like, do you like to smoke? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, you remember that. I started cracking up, but that was the funniest thing. So it's just like
So
being able
true
to,
though.
yeah. Like there's like they may not know, but you can still have fun and do some things like that. So that was for me, that's what helped me. And I'm curious, like
Yeah.
what's been helping you?
For me, I call it the yes game. It's like you just don't. It's oh yeah, yeah. You know, she'd say, "Oh, I remember when we were all just little kids, you know, running around together." You know, she pictures us as we were all children together, and she'll always kind of like throw at scenarios like that, that you know make absolutely no sense. But instead of being like trying to correct them, which makes it difficult for both people, I think, because it's stressing them out and then it's also like upsetting you. So it's just, yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We used to have so much fun on the farm and just go along with it. And I feel like that's like the easiest way to go, kind of get through it when I get to visit her. I'm lucky that my brother Wade, he'll go to visit her and he'll video call me from the home. And she doesn't really understand that either, barely looks at the screen, but just hearing her laugh and just being able to kind of be present for a little bit, a time that's, you know, that's basically how I've gotten through it. And then I guess I just dreams. I just had a dream about her today that we were decorating a Christmas tree, which was something that we've always done. And I've never had a Christmas tree really in my home. I had one. I think I did a tree once since I've been in here because it's just something about having a tree and not like just being alone is so weird to me. You know, it was something that we would do together. And in the dream, I'm opening up a box, and I have never opened this box in years that has all of our old decorations on it, you know, cheesy little crafts that we made that I held on to. But for some reason, I guess in this dream, I decided to open it and have that moment with her because I think I just missed that.
Wow, that's so interesting. I don't know any like academic research like in that area. So it's kind of interesting you're having these very positive dreams of old times together. And also when you're talking, you said you had these lucid, dreams where you're chatting with her. Is it about like current events or is it about in the past? Like what are those conversations like?
So it's weird. It's just, it's like it's normal. Like, I think in this dream, she was telling me that her windshield wipers were being weird and, you know, just conversation. And she had to drive, you know, she was going to drive out to Kamloops where her sister lives. So it's like we were here in BC. So it's almost like it must be from the past. It must be, I'm just recreating something from the past to kind of make it seem like she's still around. And just, I always felt a little bit of guilt because, you know, you don't assume they're going to get dementia. You think you're going to have more time and you miss out on things like even small things like going to dinner. No, I'm going to stay home, grandma. I don't want to go. Or going to a family event. I didn't want to go because I just, you know, and like how badly you would just go change anything to go back and be able to have that time and give your head a shake. You know, so I think that's my way of just making up for lost time is like I just kind of recreate memories and moments with her, but I don't have control over it. I just know. And then again, it's one of those things where I wake up and I feel like it feels good. You know, it's not overly sad. It's like, oh, that was a good visit, you know?
Right, yeah. And so do you see it as her soul visiting or would it be not the same as maybe someone who's died? Like
I
I
don't
don't know,
know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Cause she's not dead. That's the thing. That's what weirds me out the most. And that's kind of like one of the things I wanted to, you know, share with you because I find it so interesting. And, you know, now knowing that you are kind of have going through the same thing, it's like, it's, yeah, people don't really think about that as far as grief, you know, you grieving for somebody who's gone, but not gone. And it's very, very strange. It's almost like you're preparing yourself for the end anyways, you know, like, in a way. I mean, like, does it make it easier? I don't know. You know, it's hard to say, but that's definitely a big one for me.
Yeah, I think most people don't have that, right? Like either it's a sudden
Yeah.
loss or it's extended, but they continue to remember you, right? Like if it's an extended one. But like for
Yeah.
this, it's like it's almost this double loss that I don't know how you prepare yourself for it. And then like there's that how long is it going to be? Like, yeah, they're getting older, but they could have dementia for years and not die. And so it's really, how do you come to terms and keep your heart open? Like it's like how, like I noticed my heart close, like when I first had that experience with my grandma, like how can I keep my heart open and still have
Mhm.
moments with her, right? Like, 'cause I don't want to feel guilty as I move forward, or if she does die and it's like, oh, I never got a chance to show her my love to the same extent as I did when she remembered me, right? Like, and so I
Mm.
think like there's a process in that on how do we work through our own suffering and our own uncomfortableness around it, because they're not uncomfortable with us too much. I don't think.
Yeah.
It's more like we're uncomfortable with that pain of just them not realizing.
Yeah, definitely, and I remember the first time when I went to visit her, I think I maybe approached her too quickly, and, like, I reached out for her hand, and she kinda, like, pulled away, and it was, like, so jarring for me because 'cause I'm like, "Grandma, like, like, I am your baby girl, like, what are you doing?" And that was, like, so hurtful, but I'm like, "You have to think, like, you're just like a stranger." She thought I was a nurse, and she's like, "Just give me my pills and get it over with." And I'm like, "It's not why I'm here." You know? So, it's hard, it is, you definitely really have to open your heart and just, like, try to see it from their perspective and just be patient because I think that's just what they need. And yeah, like I said, it's just becomes a little yes game, and my brother, he's fantastic with her, he's probably better than I am trying to bring up conversation, like you were saying, something to talk about, but you can't really ask them too many things because it's confusing, so he's way better at carrying a conversation than I am. I kinda shut down a little bit until we start laughing and it's feels totally normal again. So yeah, it's tricky, and I think she has good days and bad days, but, like, I think we all do, so
Yeah, and it's nice also just to hear them laugh. Like it's just like those sounds, like mean a lot. And even if they remember you or don't, like when so I had a similar event where it's like I wanted to hug her, but then I'm like, oh, and then I remembered, oh, like this may not be appropriate for her. So I asked her, I said, like before I was leaving, I go, Grandma, do you want me to hug you? And she's like, no. I was like, but I was okay
Amen.
with it. But yeah, I was okay with that. And like my aunt was also there and she started laughing. Then my grandma started laughing. And so it's like, that meant more than the hug, just like to hear her laugh and to
Mhm.
have that kind of moment as I left. Because at the end of the day, like she was laughing. Like that's joy. That's something that you kind of want to have those moments with, even if I can't have that kind of connection.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very rewarding, so I'm always grateful for my brother to be there. He takes the tension off. He's very positive, whereas I can't say that I'm a negative person, but I think I'm more realistic about things where he's just kind of like, "Everything's fine," "Everything's totally fine and normal," and I'm like, "Oh, what about this? What about this?" and overthinking everything, but yeah, he helps take the tension off for sure.
Have you asked him about his dreams? If he has dreams of your grandma? Because it's gonna be kind of interesting if you're having a certain type and he's having something different.
I think he has more dreams, I think, about our parents. I'm
Oh,
not really
okay.
sure that if we've like yeah, he had a way stronger connection with my dad. They lived through a car accident together and, like, they've been through a lot of things, and again, like, my dad wasn't exactly super great to us when we were kids, but yeah, I think he's had more visitations like that too. I've actually told him that I was gonna do this, and he's like, "I find that so interesting." It's like it's it's definitely something that's important, I think, to talk about. I see Wade in my dreams all the time too because he's in a wheelchair, and so there's a lot of times where I'm, like, dreaming about him walking, and I'm like, "Look at you, you're walking." Like, it's not like normal, like, back in the day, like, it's like I'm like, "Oh my god, you can walk again," and we're running around and having adventures, and it's so cool. So it's like, in a sense, I can't say that I have a lot of grief in that sense, but I know that he does. So I think about that and I dream about things where I think that would make him happy, you know?
Do you have any, I guess, tips for people who want to learn more about dreams that you'd sort of suggest if they're just on the journey of thinking that, oh, maybe dreams are a little more meaningful? Like is there anything that you would tell them?
I think talking to people about it, like, is probably the best way. Finding like a bridge or relationship, or similar experiences, especially with people that have experienced similar things. You might see some of the same stuff and not even realize it. With my brother, we often dream of my grandma's house on the north side. We had a lot of experiences there as kids, so I think that's a common one. We're always at grandma's house, and she's always kind of coming down the stairs, and we're always like scattering to put away whatever we're not supposed to be playing with or doing, right? It's a grandma coming down the stairs or coming home from work in the garage door. That's something I think we share as far as that goes. But yeah, I think just talking about it and just figuring out, where you sit with your feelings about it is probably the best thing.
I like that. I like that. And so, one of the final questions that we like to ask on the podcast is if you could have a dream tonight of anyone who has died, what would you want that dream to be?
Honestly, I would just like for my family to be together again, There wasn't a lot of instances where we were visiting with our mom and our dad at the same time. They were kind of estranged when we were kids. So I think I would like to dream of them having a positive interaction in the same space, and sharing that with my brothers. It's something that I don't think that I ever get to experience because it's not something that I ever had as a kid. They were always negative towards each other. So I never really had that. So I think if I wanted to fabricate something that hasn't happened before, that would probably be it. Just be with my parents again.
Would it be like over dinner? Would it be at like an event? Like, how do you kind of see that?
Feel like it would be like a barbecue because of both my parents, like they both love to be outside and they love nature. Like I always, when I'm thinking about a positive experience, there's usually nature involved. Like I'm outside, you feel the wind, there's, sunshine, there's water. All those elements are present. Sitting around a fire is a big one too. So I think just, sharing food is always a good one. And barbecues is what my mom always used to do was barbecue. My dad loved camping. So it only makes sense that they would both enjoy that.
I like that. I like that. Hopefully you get that dream sometime soon. If you do,
Right.
please let me know. Please let me know. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and just sharing a little bit about your life and some of the dreams that have happened. And it's a very interesting conversation just on the different types of dreams you've had and also sort of with someone that has dementia and the dreams you're having, about your grandmother. And it's just like we need like this is why I love these conversations because I'm learning like from that and then I'm also connecting to my own life and say, oh, like I haven't had too many of my grandma, even though, I know it's a big part of my own processing of my grief. And so it's nice to sort of like hear someone else who's having these dreams and what they can look like. So anyways, I want to just thank you again for just, being you and also doing the work and choosing a different lifestyle that may be more conducive to healing in your own journey. So I want to also commend you on making those different choices because I know it's a difficult process to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. I had a good time. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it.